Welcome everyone to the first episode of SageMaker Friday in 2023. I am Angela Santos. I'm the Product Marketing Manager at AWS. With me, I have my colleague today. Mani, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Angela. Hi, everyone. I'm Mani Kanuja. I'm Senior AIML Specialist Solutions Architect at AWS, and very happy to be joining the first episode on the SageMaker Friday in 2023.
Today, the topic is all around SageMaker notebooks. We use notebooks to develop machine learning models and experiment it and deploy the models. And we would like to introduce the next generation SageMaker notebooks to help you to boost your machine learning model development process more efficiently. SageMaker offers different types of notebooks. From the studio notebooks, we will focus on majority of our time today. They are quick start collaborate notebooks that you can use to easily access all the purpose-built tools in SageMaker. But we also offer notebook instance on SageMaker, where you can easily use the familiar notebooks experiment tools that you can use on SageMaker. And if you are new to machine learning, no worry, we have Studio Lab, where it's a free environment you can get started. During our experiment, our conversation with our customer, we have found a lot of innovation opportunity to boost machine learning model development productivities. And today, Mani and I are going to use some role play in different scenarios. Hope that will help us and help you to understand how you can use this new capability in your day-to-day machine learning model building time. So let's start with the first scenario. So I'm from the marketing team. Let's assume that I manage a group of data science. So a group of data science, they use notebooks to experiment with different models and cooperate. Once the data science builds some basic models, he or she in my team often needs to share with another coworker who can review how well the models are working. Currently, I have noticed that the data science need to save the work, send the notebook through either email or share folder, and wait for another feedback. And I noticed that the back and forth process is really inefficient. Mani, who is the head of the central AI/ML platform teams, who owns providing notebook experience to different teams on SageMaker. So I come to Mani to ask for help. Mani, do you have any resolution that can help us to increase our collaboration using SageMaker?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Angela. So I think it will be better if we actually show how we can do that. And I will, during that process, I will also explain some of the key concepts around Amazon SageMaker and how it can help with the real-time collaboration between the data scientists or the team members. Okay, so with that, I'll first log into the AWS console. So I'm here, and then you can search SageMaker in the search box and then click on Amazon SageMaker. So while you're here, so the first concept that we need to really understand before we can even start working on SageMaker is to understand the concept of domains. So what is a domain? So think of domain as using which you can provision your underlying infrastructure as well as the environment. So when I say infrastructure, it includes like, okay, where my studio domain will reside, like inside a VPC. So you can provide those settings around that. You can also provide some environment settings. So for example, if you want to use any custom kernel or images, you can do that. So in order to create a domain, you just go and do create domain, which is, remember, is a one-time setting that you have to do. And after that, you can onboard multiple users to the same domain. And there are two setups. One is the quick setup. The other one is the standard, which lets you do a lot of advanced stuff as well. But in this, let me show you and walk you through what this setup really looks like. So first, you can enter the domain name. And I would recommend to enter a name which identifies your particular team. So if it's a logical name, it will be easier for you to understand like the purpose of the domain and what was your team's mission. And so for our demo purpose, let's say we are doing personalization marketing team, and then you can provide one user, and then later on you have the capability to add multiple users to your domain, right? So let's do user one. So again, the recommendation is not to do something like user one or two, but to provide proper logical names. Or you can also provide your NTIDs. So whatever's works for you, which uniquely identifies a user. And then you have to provide an execution role. So this execution role gives access to the resources in SageMaker. So you can have, so make sure that you have the Amazon SageMaker full access, and there are multiple ways on how you can create the execution role. So one way is that I can use the existing role. So I already have the existing role. I can go over here, and then I can also click on the create role and then specify, okay, the S3 bucket permissions and so on. But it only lets me do limited stuff, right? But it will automatically create a role with Amazon SageMaker full access and the buckets that I specify, or specific buckets or any bucket. Or there is a new option where you can actually go to the create role using the role creation wizard. So that helps you in providing more accurate and granular permissions. So you can set up the SageMaker role, you can add a description, and it lets you quickly set up the role with more granular permissions based on what machine learning activities that you want to perform. So you can go through the wizard, and that can help you create the role. So going back to Amazon SageMaker, and let me correct this format because underscores are not allowed. So for the sake of the demo, I'll use the existing role. And then you can also choose to enable SageMaker Canvas permission. SageMaker Canvas is another app using which you can do low-code or no-code machine learning, mostly for business analysts, users. It's meant for that, or for that matter, any user who's looking for low-code, no-code solutions. So SageMaker Canvas is another app. And then you can go and click on submit, and it will create a domain. And I'm not going to do that because I already have one domain, and it takes a little time to create a new domain. And once you create the domain, if I go back to my existing domain and I want to show you that I already have a domain. So if we go over here, you can see the number of users. In this case, I have added 2 users, and you can add additional user like this. I'm going to add user profile. Again, provide the username and the execution role, and provide some additional settings. You just have to follow the wizard. It's pretty straightforward. So you can add multiple users on your existing domain. And then, as I mentioned, domain settings, right? They really tell you about the infrastructure. So for example, in which VPC my domain exists, what is the domain level permission or the role that I have specified. So it will you can see it over here. The multiple apps like the Studio app, the Canvas, the Studio Lab that Angela talked about, or if you have an RStudio license, you can actually use it with Amazon SageMaker. So these are different apps that reside on top of the domain. So you have a domain which provides you a layer where you can have your execution role, VPC settings, and then on the top of the domain, you will have multiple apps, and then you can have multiple users accessing those apps. So why we have something like this is because then it provides each user to have its own app. So for example, if I have a studio, you can see like when I go and click on the launch button, I see these different apps, Studio app, Canvas app, and they can open up in a new window. So each user will have its own app to work on. And if you want to collaborate, then you will need to specify a collaboration space. So we do have an option of space management. So you can,
Nice.
yeah.
So yeah, thank you, Mani, for giving us from your perspective as administrations on how to set out a domain and manage the user access. And you just mentioned that you can create shared spaces in Studio. And I'm curious to learn more how to create a shared spaces and do the real-time cooperation that we are all aiming for.
Yeah, sure. So when you go to the space management, so if you want to, and coming back to your question, Angela, if you want to really manage or provide, shared access to your users, what you would need to do is create a space. I already have some space, but let me show you how you will create your own space. So first, you will have to click on Create Space. Then you will see this. You provide the space name. Let's say demo data modeling shared space. And you would see that the space execution role is great, but you have the option to go to the domain and edit that role. So you do have an option to edit this role if you want to. So it's as simple as this. Just add the space name, look at the execution role, submit, and if you want to change it, you can go to your domain settings over here, go to edit domain, and then you can change the execution role associated with your space. So that's the default space execution role, but if you want, you can actually change this role. So that's how you will create a space. So we have created a space. It takes a little while to be in service. So yeah, it's in service.
So in the space, all the user that got access to this space can actually see the resources within the space and all the ML artifacts in the space.
Yes. And let me show you how will that work. So for example, I have these multiple spaces and I have these number of users, right, within my domain. So all the users in the domain can actually go to the shared space. So for example, I have this collaboration space created. I can click on Launch Studio and then it will show me the list of the users, right? So I can just say, okay, I can log in as a user one, let's say that's who I am, for example. So it will basically configure and it will provide me the whole studio environment.
Nice. So it would be easier to organize based on your ML projects.
Yes. So when you log in the shared space, you will see the SageMaker Studio. But notice an additional functionality that we have is the collaboration, these users. So when you click on this, you can actually see the users who have this online collaboration. So they're already users who are right now online. So you can see that. And then you can just go to the folder icon on the left navigation if you want to start working on a notebook. I already have a sample notebook over here. And let's delete some stuff from here. So let's say I've imported these packages, right? So I do have this sample notebook. I can start working and the other users will see it. And you know what? It would be really cool if I can show you how the other user will see it. So let me log in as another user and then share both the screens. So you will see that while I'm typing as user one, the user two who is online will also be able to see what user one is typing. Will that be a
That
good
is
idea?
really cool. Yeah, so you can see actually two users are co-editing the notebooks in real time. So it
Yes.
actually resolved my challenge that I just mentioned, like save the notebook, share it, wait for feedback, the back and forth process. So actually right now, multiple users can come into the same notebook and
Mhm.
execute it in real time.
Yes. And let me actually show you how that will look like. So I will log in as a different user now, and I will put both the screens side by side. So now you see that I'm user one and I see this online collaborator user two as well. And on the right hand side of the screen, I'm logged in as user two. So
Yeah,
if I do
nice.
anything as user one, it will show as the user two. And let me make it bigger so that we can see what we are doing in the notebook, right? And so, for example, if I write any code, so you can see on the right side that you see the tag as user one on the
Mhm.
user two. So just to reiterate, The right-hand side of the screen is user 2, and the left-hand side of the screen is user 1. So whatever I type as a user 1, the right-hand side, the user 2 will be able to see it. So let's say that I want to read pandas data frame, basically from a CSV file. I want to create this data frame. So you can see that whatever I'm typing, this user 2 is also seeing it. So this is like really online collaboration, like real time. And if I
Yeah, it
add,
really streamlined the collaboration.
yes, and if I start working as user 2 this side, then the user 1 will be able to see it. So
Nice.
if I type something, let's say just the data frame I want to check, so then user 1 will be able to see it, right? So it's literally like real time collaboration.
Yeah, that is really cool. And you just mentioned the data frame, and I came out it came out with another question is how to use notebooks for data prep. You just resolve a really big collaboration challenge I have. Another challenge I have is doing data prep. In my data science team, a lot of time they use outside of SageMaker tool to do the data preparation. And once the data is prepped, they will import it into the SageMaker Studio notebooks to continue their machine learning model process. And I wonder how do we streamline that as well?
Okay. And just reiterating your question. So you're looking at the data prep options within the notebook and how people can easily prepare the data and if you have any special widgets or applications to do that, right?
Yes, exactly. How do we do it in notebook without finding another tool outside of the notebook and import it after? So
Okay.
further streamline the process.
Okay. In a simple way, using less code so that users can focus on developing machine learning models rather than working hard on preparing their data, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yes. So we do have a new feature that we recently launched. And let me just, you know, so let me close this window on the for the user and then focus on the data prep question that you have, so that we can have the full thing, full screen to see how it goes, right? So, and I will just increase my font size so that it's more clear. So what you can do is, so we have a new feature called SageMaker underscore data wrangler package. When you import this, then what happens is when you are working as in the pandas and you are reading a CSV file and printing the data frame, you will get two options. You can see the data frame as a pandas data frame, or you can see it as a data wrangler data frame. And just to provide you a little bit of background and the context, so within SageMaker Studio, we do have low code, no code data preparation option with SageMaker Data Wrangler. You can create a flow, it provides you with the UI. But the new feature that we have added is to make it easier within the notebook. So now SageMaker Data Wrangler additionally is also embedded within the notebook. All you need to do is just import the package, read a file, and let's just actually run this. So I import a package, I read a file, and then when you basically print this data frame, you will automatically see the data wrangler table. So you can see this data wrangler table and all the attributes within the data frame. So it visually shows you what's the distribution of my data, what type of data I have, whether I have categorical data, how many categories I have, and so on. And you also have an option to change it to the pandas view. So you can go to view pandas table, so you'll be able to see like a regular pandas table. But if you toggle between the view data wrangler table, that's where you'll be able to, automatically see the data visualizations without having to write additional code for that.
Nice. So you actually just within a few clicks, you got the data visualization powered by Data Wrangler in your notebooks.
Yes.
And can you explain further on the data visualization we see here? We have seen a different warning icon. What do those icons means, and how can we actually uh, get the data inside and fix some of the data issue right in the notebooks as well?
Yeah. So, and this is what I really like about this data wrangler embedded visualization option. So it's not just the visualizations that are embedded, it's more interactive. So what you
Mm-hmm.
can do, and these warning signs, when you click on that, it actually shows you the insights. So you can see that, okay, total count 890, 891 values, valid values 891, invalid value 0, missing value 0. And then you can go to the data quality. And then it shows you, you know what? It's an ID column because it might have just the unique values. And when we are training our models, we don't give our model the ID values, right? So then it gives you the suggested transformations as, okay, these are all ID values. Let's just, drop this particular column. And then when I click on it, it will basically drop this particular column. And similarly, I can go to this name field, again, go to data quality. This is also ID, so I'll drop this column again. And then I go to the age. Now, interesting fact about this particular column. So if you look at it, this line actually is not the whole white line. It also had this purple color, which says 20% missing. So it gives me a visual indication just by looking at this attribute that, okay, this is my distribution, how this data distribution looks like, and also that, oh, we do have some missing values. And then I can just go on, click on this warning icon, and I will get exactly how many missing values are there. So in this case, I have 177. And then I can go to data quality, and then I can have these suggested transforms. Now, because it's an age column, you can have an option that you can replace it with a new value, drop it, drop the entire column, or replace it with either a median or a mean. So let's just use to replace the age with a median value. And now you will see that there are no missing values, and you will also see that the data distribution has also changed, right? So you can go on and just try it out and see the different values and take action on it. And there is another thing. So I just talked about that purple thing. Now we have this blue line, which gives us the
Mm-hmm.
invalid values. So I can actually click on that and look at the data quality, and look at the data quality and check the insights and so on. So right from here, I can basically take actions as needed.
Yeah. So you, like you mentioned, it's really interactive. You can see the recommendations and just within few clicks to fix the issues. So after you run all the recommendations, how do we see the notebook codes?
Yeah, so let's say I'm done and I don't want to do anything else. It automatically adds the code in the bottom on whatever actions I was taking. So you can see the entire code which is being added. And then I can just run this code. And this all these transformations have been applied. And now
Mm-hmm.
whenever I see the output DF column, the output data frame, and I run it, it
Mm-hmm.
will show me the new data frame, which doesn't have those columns that we just dropped, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ID columns, the name passenger ID column, and the name ID column. And then, if, for example, because this is a Titanic data set, right? So the Titanic data set is kind of a hello world data set for working with pandas. So it's easier to explain different concepts. But the way, if we have to create a machine learning model and figure out how many passengers survived, uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the use cases that you can use with the Titanic data set. So then, for example, then this survived column will be my target column, and I can create a classification model to figure out, to predict basically how many people survived, right? Whether this
Mm-hmm.
particular passenger survived or not. So I can just go and click on this column, select it as a target column. So, and then it will give me, okay, which type of problem, because it's a categorical uh, column, it is showing me classification, but if it's showing me wrong, I also have an option to show it, to click on the regression, and then I can just run. So that's how you can specify and make a particular column as target. So now you notice on the right hand side, it shows that it's a target. And then you can just start working on the data frame and start writing your machine learning model and work on it.
And what if we, as we building machine learning models, once the codes are written, we always have new data set coming in. So is there any way we can just automate the notebook execution so we don't need to manually manage when the new data set come in?
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, in this particular example, I was showing you that I was working on the data set, which is I have a file locally, right? But in a real world
Mm-hmm,
scenario, you might have data on S3 bucket. And then as
mm-hmm,
the new data comes in, you can have, you know, as the new data comes in on S3, you can say that, okay, I want to schedule my notebook so that every time the new data comes in, the transformations are the same. And I want these transformations to work. That can be like one use case as we were talking about this.
mm-hmm.
The another use case can be, I want to retrain a model. I already have it. There is new data. Let's retrain the model, and code is written in the notebook, right? So you can actually, in those use cases, you have the option where you just want to schedule it, right?
Yeah,
Notebook.
scheduling in the time that it's periodic that I choose, and just
Yeah.
make it easier so that I don't need to manually do it every time.
Yeah. So, for example, let's say your data is coming in the evening and you want to run this, schedule the notebook to run on the midnight, something like that, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So we have added another new feature which has made this job very simple, is to click on this notebook icon on the top. You see this calendar plus. So you click on that, and then you will see create job. So the job name is the name of my notebook for now. You can based on which notebook you're scheduling, you need to provide that, the input file, and you can also change the job name. And then you can say, okay, which compute I want this notebook to run on, because I might have been testing this notebook on a different compute, but then I want to change it and I want to say, okay, run this notebook on a bigger machine. So I have an option to select that compute. And then I have option to run it or schedule it. And I do have additional options as well, like which image or which kernel I want to run the notebook, which role I want to associate, where's my input data coming from, where the output of this should go in. Do I want to configure a job encryption or not, or do I want to add environment variables, so on and so forth. So based on your need, you can actually use these parameters to schedule the notebook. And just to quickly show you, like you can either do run now, which will start running the notebook right away, or you can do run on a schedule. So with run on a schedule, you can say, okay, I want to run every weekday at this particular time. And the time you have to specify is in UTC. And you get this help, like because I'm in the Pacific time zone. So it's telling me that, oh, for the UTC time zone, add 8 hours to your local time. So it automatically provides me that insight. So let's say if I want to schedule the notebook for, let's say, 9 p.m. at night, and I can provide the time like that. So every weekday it will run at 9 p.m. or UTC time. Or I have an option to change it. If I want to do it on a particular day or particular day of the week, I can specify, okay, weekly and only on the Mondays, or I can say, okay, every day. So I can specify that also. Or I can say, oh, I need a custom schedule. So I can specify a cron job and it will run that. And if you need any help with the creating that cron expression, you can basically click over here. So let me show you if I just do for the weekday, 9 p.m. and then create. So what happens is when you do that, you can actually see what all notebook jobs are there. So this is the one that I ran earlier, not right now, but then I can go to the notebook definitions, and this is the one that I just scheduled. So you can actually see the name, the input file that it will run, the schedule. It's weekdays, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Status is active. And if I want to take some action, like pause it or do something, I can also pause the schedule. So then it will not run, and then I can enable it. So as I keep adding the new schedules, it will just show me, and all I have to do is just press this reload button.
Nice. So you actually have an overview on all your scheduled notebooks, and you can
Yes.
pause it, like you mentioned, or reschedule it as needed.
Yes, absolutely. And you can create different schedules for the same notebook or different notebooks, and you have this one place where you can see all the notebook definitions and the schedules for each of these notebooks.
Nice. And as Mani showed it in the studio environment, I've learned that this notebook capability is also available on the Studio Lab environment, the free ML development environment that we just mentioned earlier. So I think this is a really neat feature that can really automate your notebook executions. So it will more streamline your process.
Yes, absolutely. And if you want to look at the outputs, you can just download the output files as well. So it gives
Nice.
you that option. Okay.
So it looks like all this capability help me as a user in the marketing team streamline from collaboration, data prep, and the executions. I have another question is if I have another team outside of the marketing, let's say a finance team, they usually doesn't want to share sensitive data with other teams. So how do I manage that?
Yeah, and trust me, I have been asked this question so many times, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked that because I think our viewers at home will really benefit from that.
Yeah,
So,
sometimes I want to share our ML project with them, and it's easier for us to do that from the marketing team. But I heard a lot of constraint from other teams as well. So if you have a resolution for that, happy to hear more about it.
yeah, absolutely. So, what you can do is, I'll go back to the Amazon SageMaker console here, and let's see. So in the domains, earlier we only had an option to create one domain per account per region, right?
Mhm.
So, but now with the new feature that we have recently added, you can create multiple domains in the same account in the same region. And in this particular scenario, I would recommend to add additional domain. The reason is that with each domain, as I mentioned earlier, you can specify a particular VPC. So, for example, if you have a finance domain, right? If you want,
Yeah,
so for example, if you have a finance team, right? So, I would recommend to create a different domain for the finance team, as you can see it on my screen, the way I have done it. The reason
nice. So
is,
you can actually create multiple domains within your AWS account based on
yes,
different purpose.
yes, and there is a soft limit of 5 domains that you can create, which can be increased. And the reason I'm suggesting to create a different domain if you don't want to collaborate, other teams don't want to collaborate, is because you can provide a separate role to this particular domain.
Hmm.
Meaning, because within the role, we have different permissions. So this particular domain can have entirely a different set of permissions because they might be working on some sensitive data that they might not want to share with you, or and only the data scientist within the finance team should have access to it. Or you can even provide different access controls to different users within the domain. So there are 2 levels where you can specify the role. One is at the domain level. Say if I have this domain level permission, so you can provide that execution role. Or if you want to provide specific roles to a specific user, then even at the user level, you have an option to provide a different execution role. So that way you can provide granular access controls to the different teams. And also because the domain, uh, so this is one part, the access control, and you can also set up it in an entirely different VPC, which is a virtual, virtual private cloud. The reason is you might have a requirement where they might say, oh, we don't want internet access. So you can
Hmm.
limit that by properly creating a VPC and then creating the domain within that particular VPC.
Nice. This really will solve a lot of data sharing or model sharing constraint that I just mentioned by
Yeah.
having multiple domains within the same account.
And you know what? While we're on this topic, let's click on this because this will help us understand the domain structure, right?
Mhm.
So the domain as I mentioned earlier, and just to summarize what we have discussed, right? A domain will consist of what it will consist of underlying infrastructure like your VPC configurations, your policies,
Mhm.
your roles, your variety of security, as well as Elastic File System and EFS, which will be associated with that domain. And then you will have a list of authorized users on top of that domain, right? So you can have like multiple user profiles as well as the shared spaces within a domain. And each user profile or a user can have their own personal app. Meaning, if they are using SageMaker Studio or SageMaker Canvas, you have different apps. So each user will have their own personal app. So, for example, a Studio instance, and they will have a private Elastic File System directory, and they will have access to shared SageMaker resources across the domain. So, shared SageMaker resources like shared spaces, right?
Mhm.
And if a user is working on their own app and not on the shared space, then whatever work they do is will not be seen by other users. So that's like private to what they are working on. Only the
Mhm.
work that they do in the shared spaces is what will be available to all the other users within the domain.
Nice. So thank you, Marnie, for sharing all the new capabilities from administration perspective, like tackle different kind of challenge within an organization, to individual ML developer, how they work with their team, how they streamline data prep, and how to remove all the heavy lifting to automate the notebooks as as the notebook jobs easily. So all these new capability that we just announced at reInvent are available right now, and we are encouraging you to learn more. We have documented all these new capability we just show in a single blog post. So we will share the link in the chat and encourage you to learn more and give us your feedback. And as we continue to innovate in our SageMaker Notebooks capability, we will update our webpage. So we will share our webpage in the chat as well. So give us your feedback, learn more, and hope all this new capability to help you and your machine learning teams be more cooperated and be more productive.
Absolutely. And as Angela mentioned, do look at this new blog post. We have provided the link on the chat. And it talks about all the things that we just showed you, like new notebook capability for simplified data preparation, like the built in data preparation that we just showed you, and as well as the shared spaces and how you can use the shared spaces. So we have everything, whatever we showed you in this one blog. And I would definitely recommend you to go check it out because it shows you all these new capabilities that we have added, including the notebook capability to automate your notebooks. So go try it out and have fun with it and provide us your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope you have a great Friday and hope to see you again on more collaboration tool and more machine learning models building tools that we can provide in the upcoming Friday as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.